Hello, and welcome to Frankly Speaking with Frank Portinari, the podcast that gains access to real and inspiring people. Before I introduce today's guest, Paul Boggie, I'd like to say my usual thanks to everybody that's been supporting the podcast, those who've left positive comments, those that subscribe, and obviously those that like. I'd also like to acknowledge our sponsor, Sheet Roofing Limited, and also Gary from Mac the Hat Media, who gives us technical advice and assistance. And I'd also like to acknowledge our usual charity, the Alzheimer's Society. On Sunday, my wife and I took part in a walk, a memory walk, in Queen Elizabeth Park, and we'd like to thank everybody that made donations towards that very worthy cause. There seems to be a situation on YouTube at the moment between certain podcasters who indulge in slagging each other off or trying to undermine each other. I'd just like to stress that that's not what, frankly speaking, is all about. We would prefer to see unity between podcasters, particularly those who've got lots of influence, and to be helping charities and organisations, for example, the Alzheimer's Society, and also Change Your Life, Put Down Your Knife, which we're also very big on supporting. But the most important person today is Paul Boggie. Paul, who I'll describe as a former heroin addict, a Scots Guard, and now a successful author. So, Paul, welcome to Frankly Speaking.
Hello, Frank. Thanks very much for having me on.
I've got to say, this is the first time I've seen you, and my first impression, you look nothing like what a heroin addict would look like. So whatever you've done in the last few years, my friend, congratulations, because you look really well. You look really well.
Yeah, thank you. I've actually had that for large portions of my life, even fresh into recovery. You know, I'm 17 years off heroin now, so probably within a year, perhaps, of me fresh in recovery, when I started eating again, I started exercising and going to the gym. People would often come up to me and not believe that I was a heroin addict, you know, and so that's sort of been the case all the way through my life. An element of disbelief in people. So yeah, thank you, but I try my best. You know,
yeah, no, you look really well. You look really well. What I'd like to ask you is where you grew up, Paul. You know, your hometown.
Yeah, so I grew up in Edinburgh. I had a good upbringing. Strict parents. My mum and dad both worked multiple jobs. 4 boys. I was the second eldest. So they were always working. They were always extremely strict with us. And yeah, it was a good upbringing. You know, school life. Because I was the second eldest, I suppose it was a little bit easier because my big brother was already in the schools that I was going into. He was already established, and you know, so that sort of helped with the bullying side. Certainly with a surname like Boggie, you know, kids being kids are cruel. So with a surname like Boggie, you sort of open yourself up to being bullied for that. But my brother was already there, so the bullying wasn't too bad in primary school. And I suppose it wasn't too bad in secondary school either. I grew up in an area, a deprived area, where alcohol and cannabis use were the done thing. That was frequent. You know, and I can remember back being a little boy, 7, 8 years old, jumping around in the gang that we used to jump around in. You know, and I've watched all these podcast wars, which it's known as now. Like you mentioned there about everybody arguing, and I've watched a lot of these big interviews, and they're interviewing gangsters. I was in a gang, but I don't actually class myself as a gangster in the sense that people, when you say gangster, it's a term that people use for like notorious criminal that sort of thing. And I wasn't like that. I was just jumping around with friends from school who, nighttime, we would take the football, we would go out, we'd smash a few windows, we'd get into some fights, we'd light a few fires, we'd torment the police because they would chase us and we liked being chased. So we would torment the police. And then that was just always the way that it was. The age difference in the gang was, so I'm 10 years old, and there's guys cutting around in the same gang that are in their mid-20s and 30s. So there was that big age gap. And what a lot of these guys were alcoholics. So they were always having the bottles of Buckfast and the bottles of cider that were always there. And they had no problem with a 10-year-old Paul Boggie going up and saying, "Can I try that?" Of course, it's funny. Everybody laughs, and it's a big joke and a laugh when these older guys are giving it to the younger guys. And it was sort of just like that all the way through. There was a lot of glue sniffing. There was a lot of buzzing gas. I remember a lot of that went on. I didn't really know what they were doing back then. I remember seeing them with their sleeves, always had their hands at their mouth and always had rashes around their mouth. That was quite freaky. I never tried it. Only briefly tried buzzing gas, but I never pursued anything like that. And that was really young when I was doing that. Cannabis comes on the scene, and that's, again, everybody's in the area, everybody's smoking the cannabis, you can smell it. I tried it, I didn't really like it. Life just went like that all the way through, same groups of people, some knife crime, people getting slashed, people getting beaten up, and it was just a normal way of living. It was, as long as it's not me, then that's okay. It was when you seen horrible people getting beaten up in the street for absolutely no reason whatsoever, just for walking past the area that we hung around in. People just got beat up for no reason, and it just became a sort of a normal occurrence. Just a group, unruly kids and adults, actually. Because these older guys, they're all adults, but they were drunk and on drugs. So it was just that sort of upbringing. I kept myself to myself for the most part. Didn't really get into that much trouble. My older brother, he was a bit of a troublemaker. He was sort of well respected within the gang, which meant that I didn't get bullied as much as what I would have, I believe. I got bullied from him a lot. I got beaten up from my brother a lot. For the simple reason, I'm jumping around in the same gang as him. Now, he's getting up to no good. People are talking about the things that he's getting up to. And when I'm there, when we go home of a night time, we're in the same family home, and he's bullying me, I'll tell mum. I'll tell mum, I heard earlier on what you got up to. I can't exactly what you've done. If you hit me again, I'm going to tell mum. So he really did take a disliking to me for hanging around with the same sorts of friends. He didn't like it. I understand why. He didn't like it, but they were my friends as well. A lot of his friends liked me, and that really boiled his piss as well when his friends sort of befriended me as well. Oh, that's Kev's wee brother. He used to encourage me to come in. have a wee draw of that joint, or have a wee sip of that can of lager, Paul. I'll not tell your brother. And it was always like that, but that was just normal life. You know, you grow up, teenage years, lots of bullying, lots of feeling like I don't really fit in, fighting for attention from my mum and dad. 4 boys. I felt like I never really got much attention because my mum had 4 boys running around being unruly, and I felt like there was no attention coming my way, so I would misbehave.
Where did you find employment? What was your first job?
So I had paper rounds growing up, and I loved it because it allowed me to generate my own money. I didn't have to rely on my parents giving me pocket money. So paper rounds all through, and then 15, I got a job in an Italian restaurant washing dishes. It was, I think it was £10 on the Friday night and £15 for the Saturday night. Long shifts, hard shifts, but at 15, having £25 in my back pocket was pretty amazing, and it kept me off the streets because my friends were out getting up to no good. So that was the very first job. My parents said that if you leave school at 16, you have a job, or you're not leaving school, you'll stay on. So I wanted to leave school at the first opportunity. So I knew at 16 I had to get a job. I got a job as a baker, Crawford's the Bakers. Absolutely loved it. It was the confectionery side. So I was doing all the chocolate eclairs, Mr. Blobby cakes, you know, just everything. And it was all these things that I loved that I was working, I was making this stuff. Unfortunately, that company went into liquidation and I was made redundant. Fortunately, I walked into another job. I got another dishwashing job. And then I went to Safeway, which is now Morrison Supermarket. I got a job there very quickly, and that was fortunate, you know, because I had a car. I'm now on the road at 17. I got my provisional, passed my test, and I've got a car. I'm generating my own money. I'm a boy racer round Edinburgh.
It's not exactly Jack and Stewart, is it?
No, but when you're 17 and that sort of age,
feels like it, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's a freedom, and you know, you're going out, you're passing the nightclubs at 2, 3 in the morning in your car. You're not even old enough to drink yet, and you're peeping the horn at the girls as they come out, and it was just, I loved it.
Yeah.
And then shortly after, everybody started using heroin. It was no longer alcohol, just alcohol and cannabis, and occasionally tins of gas and tins of glue. Everybody was really, they just started out of nowhere. Like, it took everybody by surprise. It took everybody's family members by surprise as well. Mine's included. The thing was, Frank, was that there were no spoons, belts, or needles to be seen. So, was it really heroin?
Oh.
You know, because growing up at school, you're taught, and certainly things that you see on the television with heroin, there's always a belt there, there's always needles, cotton wool, and that's that visual thing that you see. So when I seen all my friends sitting with tinfoil, chasing the dragon, I didn't think it was as dangerous. Quite naively, didn't think it was as dangerous, and I thought, surely you can't get addicted, you know, through only smoking it.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been the belief of many of my friends who had good upbringings as well, good parents. I think that would have been the belief of many of those as well, that it wasn't as dangerous and you can't get addicted. Unfortunately, you can get addicted, and we all did. Many of them are still taking heroin to this day. Some of them sadly died. But
Paul, how long did that? Sorry to interrupt. How long did that process take before it kicked in? That it became an addiction.
so because I had a car, I was a source of transport to go and get the heroin. So I used to take my friends to get the heroin, and I used to let them chase the dragon in my car for, I think they were doing it for about 2 weeks before I done it. So 11 or 12 of my friends are already chasing the dragon, and I never touched it. I was a transport man, so we'd go up into the neighbourhood where the heroin dealers were. We'd buy it. I would say maybe a month. And it was the only reason that my friends became aware was because there was a drug bust. And when there's a drug bust, all the dealers go underground. There's nothing for sale. And so that happened on that particular night, that there was a drug bust. We couldn't get it. And all my friends were moaning about not feeling well. And genuinely, they looked ill. I remember sitting in the car, looking in the rear view mirror, looking at them, sitting in the back seat, and they looked really ill. I couldn't understand it at that point because I didn't really feel that. I didn't really feel that bad. Certainly not the way that they looked. So didn't think anything of it. Eventually, we got heroin, and instantly, as soon as they took the heroin, they looked better.
Yeah.
Strange. I remember them moaning, stomach cramps, and they were sweating, and they just didn't look very good at all. And I remember getting the heroin, and we went back to the area to take the heroin, and instantly, every single one of my friends just looked better. They had smiles on their faces. They were happy. And I was like, very strange. That should have been the moment that I realised that a red flag should have went off in my head.
Yeah.
I should have said to myself, look, your pals are in trouble. You didn't feel like that now. Stop now, or you're going to end up like that. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, Frank. You know?
Yeah, of course.
So I continued taking it. Shortly after, a few weeks after, there's another drug bust, and then that's my opportunity to experience what is known as cold turkey, which is obviously not being able to take the heroin as much as I wanted to. There was a drug bust and nothing I could do about it. So I started getting stomach cramps, the shivers, sweating, irritable, angry. And the very first time I ever realised how much danger I was in was the very first time I took heroin whilst being cold turkey.
Right.
So when the very first time that I felt this horrible feeling, and it was horrendous, when I took heroin, it felt amazing. Because it instantly took away all the physical pain that I had. It took all that away instantly. And I remember realising to myself at that time, you're in trouble now.
Yeah.
Because every time you're going to feel like this, or every time you're going to go cold turkey and you're going to feel that way, you now know in your mind that heroin will fix it. That's what your body's needing. It needs the heroin. So that was when I sort of realised, although I wouldn't say it out loud, I'm a heroin addict. I never said it ever. I knew it in my own mind. Yeah. That's what had happened, but I never voiced it to anyone. Tried to hide it and lie about it, and sent it through family and things, and that was just my life. I held my job full-time whilst a heroin addict. I had heroin in my sock, and I was getting out my face at work and passing it off as the flu, or if my eyes were red, I'd say, "Oh, I just need an antihistamine," or people would comment and say, "You look tired," or "I've just not sleeping. I've got a lot in my mind, and I've just not slept for a few days." And, "Oh, is everything okay?" "Yeah, it's fine." When in actual fact, I've just been sitting in the toilet chasing the dragon. That's why I look so tired. And that lasted from the age of 18 to 20, so 2 years. Then at my 21st birthday party.
Sorry, Paul, did you stay employed all that time?
2 years.
I'm genuinely shocked, and I think probably a lot of other people would be. I think there's the perception, because I think one of my next questions was going to be, at what stage did you turn to criminality to finance this habit?
The first 2 years in my heroin addiction, I worked full-time. And what that done was obviously gave me a monthly wage, and it gave me an ability to get bank loans and payday loans, because I could produce wage slips. Throughout those 2 years, working full-time, putting a shirt and tie on in the morning, going into an office and doing a job, I was able to function to the point where people didn't really notice. If I looked tired, I looked tired. Certainly nobody said, come up and said, "You're on the smack." It never ever happened. People just often say that you look tired or you don't look well, and I would just agree and say that I've not slept very well, and then that was it. Obviously, the mood swings that were starting to show up in my life. Again, I was irritable. Certainly, when I'm at my work doing a 9 to 5 job, I would have heroin in my sock. But on the days when I never had heroin, my mind is not at work doing the job that I should be doing. My mind is there been a drug bust tonight? I'm starting to feel this cold turkey starting to creep in now. Is there been a drug bust? And when I get there, am I going to get robbed? Are these guys going to be standing and pull a knife on me and take my money? So there was that anxiety that was always very much the forefront in my mind, always. Fear.
Paul, I am genuinely shocked that you managed to hold a job down throughout all that period, because I'm sure other people as well. I mean, one of my next questions would have been, at what stage probably did you lose your job? And when did you turn to criminality, like so many have had to do? I'm genuinely amazed that you managed to carry on in employment for such a long period.
Yeah, to be 2 years is a long time to be like that on a daily basis. But there was an element of stress that I didn't have because I was financially able to fund my addiction. Obviously, I overspent, like I said there, the bank loans and stuff, but I could do that. When the physical problems and the mental problems start to get worse, then it's more difficult to hide it from my employers, because it's an everyday occurrence now. You didn't, you're snappy, you're aggressive. What is wrong? And I would have all sorts of excuses for my employers when they used to question me. And then it got to the stage where my work was being affected. I was supposed to be doing a job, which I was able to do for the first couple of years, but near the end of that, I was more focused on sitting in the toilet chasing the dragon, and I would be out of it for an hour. Where's Paul? Where's Paul? They send people to look for me, and they come into the toilet, and I'd be like, "Oh, I've got diarrhea, sorry," But really, I'm sitting there on the toilet, pan, chasing the dragon. The very first time I ever said the words, "I am a heroin addict," were to my employers of the final job. The job that I was in was shirt and tie. They knew something was wrong. They pulled me into the office, sat me down. They said, "There's been a few complaints." I said, "All right, what's wrong?" "We can see clearly there's something wrong." Before I cried, because I did cry, before I cried, I just said, "I'm a heroin addict." I'll never forget it. It's the very first time I ever said it. And I'll never forget it. "I'm a heroin addict." And I looked at their eyes, and I could see the shock in their eyes. And they said, "You really need to get help." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." And I started sobbing. And they said, "Paul, we're going to have to let you go, because you can't work here when you're like that. Go and get help." And I said, "I will." They were really nice with me. Packed up my stuff and left. Then the payment side of it, settlement-wise, is enough to fund me for a few weeks. Then what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I've got this job that's maybe, £1,000 a month. Everything that I was needing for this money for, I was not going to get bank loans. I was not going to get payday loans. I was not going to be able to borrow money and have any way of paying it back. So I had to think of alternatives. My friends at the time, robbing people, stealing from their grannies, stealing from their aunties. Some of the things are horrific that my friends done. But they were committing crimes to fund their habits. And we used to go to the local supermarket, Frank, and fill the trousers up with bacon and steak and batteries and razors to sell. I was never any good at it. So I always got told to stay outside the supermarket, because I always gave the game up to the security guard by the look on my face. So they all said, "Paul, just you get outside, because every time you're here, you've got a shifty look about you that the security guard clocks you, and then we're getting stung for it. So you wait outside." So I was like, "Fine, I don't want to be here anyway." So I'd go outside and wait. They'd get all the bacon and steak. We'd go and sell it and fund it. But because I wasn't doing it, I wasn't adding anything to the party, if you like. So I needed a way of funding my own addiction. So I got an opportunity to sell cannabis. Somebody dropped a 9-bar off. A guy that I went to school with came to me with this big lumpy hash, this big 9-bar. I've never seen anything like it in my life, but he came to me and says, "Look," and I knew he was trouble, not to be messed with. I knew that about him. But back then, when I'm on drugs and I'm struggling, I didn't care about life. I didn't care about anything at that moment. I cared about getting money to fund my heroin addiction. So it was an opportunity. Everybody I knew in the area smokes cannabis. So I can make money by supplying it. He told me the price. He said, "If you cut that up into half ounces and you sell that at £25 a half ounce, you do the math." And I'm doing the math and thinking, wait a minute, there's a few £100 there to be made just by selling this big lumpy hash. So that's what I done. I undercut everyone. So I gave them it cheaper. Most people were £30 or £35. I was £20 or £25. And I always gave bigger deals than what other people were doing.
Yeah.
So they were coming to me for their cannabis. So I know it's wrong, you know, and I'm not proud of the fact that I've done that. But in my eyes, still to this day, it was the lesser of all evils. Because I was seeing what my friends were doing out in the streets, and they were robbing people at knife point, or they were doing horrible things to fund the habit, and I didn't want to be that person. So I'm happy selling a wee bit of hash, as you know, in my own right. Like I was,
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I think most people would get that, Paul.
and then I'm ended up with big wads of money. You know, and it was strange because I'm greedy. I'm a greedy addict. So when I've got the ability to buy more bags of heroin than I need, or to buy more drugs than I actually need, you know, you end up doing that, and then your addiction gets worse as a result. And that was sort of my life. Valium, diazepam came on the scene, and they really did knock me real bad. I'm conscious of where I am, what I'm doing whilst I'm on heroin. No idea what I'm doing, Frank, when I've just swallowed 10 or 20 blues.
Wow. Yeah.
I've no idea where I am. No idea. I wake up the following day and I have no recollection whatsoever. And so many people got away because I was always quite generous. It's always been must be in my nature. But I was always overly generous, you know, giving people big lumps of hash and not charging them the earth. People, when I was on Valium and stuff, my friends would come to me and hand me £25. And I'd be like, what's that for? He says, I was up last night, I got the half ounce off you. Oh, were you? He said, Boggie, I sat and had a cup of tea with you and we had a joint. We were sitting listening to Tupac on the radio. You know, remember? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, no, I didn't. I actually can't remember any of that. He says, well, there's your 25 quid. And when I often used to think, where's all my hash went? It's like I'm missing deals here. When I was doing the tally, doing the maths at the end, thinking I'm missing 4 half ounces here. That's about £100 I'm missing. But obviously, not everybody was as genuine and honest as my friends. So they would get away with it. And that was all due to Valium. But I loved them. They made me like a zombie. I liked being like a zombie. I'd given up on life. So, you know, it was just a thing where, you know, the more out of it, and I can forget about the shame on my family. I can forget about the embarrassment that I've caused everyone by becoming a druggie. The more drugs that I took, the less I cared about that. So that just became my life. And then I became suicidal, heavily depressed, more drugs. How do I combat this depression and sadness that I've got? More drugs. A lot of things happened, Frank. We don't have to go into it because I could do a podcast for 5 hours with you quite easily, as I'm sure you're aware now. But lots of things happened, and I just became sad, and I became tired out of life. I've seen a lot of evil things, and I thought I didn't want to be here. If this is what life's going to be like for me, I would rather not be here. And then I, fortunately, and as I'm sure people that are watching are aware, I never done it. I woke up in the morning and I had the biggest fright because I had pre-planned to take my own life. But I had been spending 6 months prior to that cutting my arms and marking my body. Never with the intention of ever committing suicide, just as a cry for help. I wanted people to see I was struggling, and so I was doing that, and then it worked up to the point where I got that too sad and too tired that I started pre-planning this way I was going to do it, had everything all set up. Fortunately, thanks to Michael Stipe from REM, sitting listening to Automatic for the People. Everybody Hurts came on that song, and that saved my life. And I woke up in the morning and I thought, oh shit, that was real last night and you need to go and get help. So from that moment was when I started to seek professional help to find out what was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong. Just crying all the time. Like, I can't talk to anybody without crying. How are you today, Paul? Yeah, I'm okay. And I start crying, like, what, every single day? What's wrong with me? So, you go to the GP, the doctors, and then you go and see counsellors. I got an opportunity of doing a course about the mind, the power of the mind. I attended that course, loved it. What I learned about the mind, which was nothing to do with addiction whatsoever, what I learned about the mind, I applied it to my addiction. And then 17 years ago, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, because by then I'd learned it's a choice.
Yeah.
I looked at myself in the mirror and says, don't effing ask for heroin ever again because you're never getting it. Done that. It worked. Whatever happened that morning 17 years ago, when I looked in my eyes, it worked instantly. I knew from that moment in the mirror, I was never touching heroin ever again. And I'd had the heroin the night before. I've relapsed 13 times. I promised my family and friends I am not taking drugs, and I did. Every time I went back to heroin. Every time. On this 14th time, after doing this course about the mind, it's a choice, Paul. Self-talking in my head. It's a choice. So don't want to be a heroin addict. And then instantly, I had the whole cold turkey thing to go through. I dropped below 8 stone. The doctors told me I'm going to die from malnutrition. It won't be heroin that kills you. It'll be malnutrition because you're not eating. So I went through all that. And then from that moment in the mirror, I locked myself away. A week. I went through the cold turkey. Physically, obviously, it's not very nice. On the 14th time, it was easier because in my mind I was strong. I knew that it was just a physical thing to get through. Started dreaming about a life. Maybe get a girlfriend. Maybe get a car again. I can go back and be a boy racer. I can go. All these things that I thought my life was over, and now I'm starting to dream about these things that I could potentially go and do. So then my recovery journey started where rather than sitting smoking heroin off a night time, I used to put my running trainers on, put the music, the old MP3s that you used to get, put the music in the ears, and I used to run around Edinburgh, anywhere, along the beach, up to the castle, just run. I didn't know back then what had happened, but I had actually flipped my addiction. When I was sad or angry or anxious, rather than reaching for heroin, I was finding myself, regardless of what time it was, putting my running trainers on.
Yeah.
If I'm feeling that way at 2:30 in the morning, you would often see me out running around the block, full pelt running around the block, and then it worked. And it felt amazing because I'm physically putting the weight back on, my appetite's back, I'm getting the colour in my cheeks, the black circles under my eyes are not so bad, my mood's better, everybody's starting to notice. I started going to the gym, started lifting weights, and I took up boxing. Then, my whole life I got a job, got a girlfriend, things are looking up. I'm dreaming. I go back to Morrison's, driving a forklift,
right.
And I'm still looking for something else. Something's missing. didn't know, something's missing. I'm not really helping anybody sitting driving this forklift, I used to think. I'm not really helping anybody. I had this urge. Like, I feel like I should be helping. So I got my application for the fire brigade, and it was huge. It was huge. And I was like, no danger. No, there's no chance. Then I thought about the police, and I thought, can you imagine the sorts of circles that I'm in going? Can you imagine me even trying to get the police? I just thought with my knowledge of drugs and addiction, I could maybe really help. But then I was like, no, it's not going to work. Then the army, thought I was too old. You know, I was 30 when I joined the Scots Guards, one of the oldest guardsmen to ever join the regiment. Went up to Edinburgh Castle, and the Scotsmen and all the newspapers were there. Everybody's interviewing me and saying, you know, how does it feel to be one of the oldest recruits to go and join the Scots Guards? And I was like, yeah, it's amazing. They didn't really know my past story, I don't think. Although I never hid it. Went done my medical, told them about my heroin addiction. They said that I had been clean for long enough and I was in very good physical shape. Enjoy basic training. So I went down to Catterick, North Yorkshire, went down there. 6 months of vigorous is probably the best word to describe it. It was hell on earth to do this basic training. I am an old man in amongst an army of teenagers, and the sergeants and stuff were in their mid-20s. You know, they're 24, 25-year-old. The corporals are 20, 21, 22. The officers are 24, 25. And here's me rocking up, standing, trainee guardsman 30112753, sir. How old are you? Like, 30, sir. How do you pronounce your surname? Boggie, sir. Is it up your nose, sir? And I used to say that, like, I was lucky enough I got scalped a few times, right? But, you know, and it's just like, I was just older than everybody. And word had spread down from the medical board in Scotland, outside Edinburgh, that I used to be a heroin addict.
Right.
So they were fascinated when I rocked up. All the ranks, all the officers and all the sergeants, they were all fascinated. They're like, you're going to try and be a guardsman? And I was like, yes. And they said, how fit are you? I said, well, I box. I said, I lift weights. I run around Edinburgh every other day. They say, well, you do look quite stocky, actually. Like, so we'll give you a chance. And I'd be like, thank you, Sergeant. So, like, right, come on, let's start going out, and we've done the physical training side of things. And I was always at the front. If I wasn't the first, I was round about there. So they started to notice, like, actually, like, he's maybe 30-year-old, but, like, he's more than holding his own. The officers started to notice. I got an award in the first 2 weeks of basic training from the Welsh Guards. The Welsh Guards had this plaque, and I got awarded it. So things had really changed, you know.
Paul, I've been to Catterick. I went with an old army friend, and he's clearly told me plenty of stories. You know, the culture of being a soldier in Catterick, and it's probably the only time I'd have been a good soldier, because there was clearly a drinking culture. You know, how did you deal with that? Were you still drinking alcohol, or did you cut that out as well?
Yeah, so I've never had a problem with drink. Alcohol's always been something that I could take it or leave it. Whilst you're in basic training, there is a zero alcohol policy. But from those 5 years of me being in my recovery from heroin, I only ever drunk, you know, every other weekend or something. It was never an everyday occurrence to the point where it was a problem. So when I went down to basic training and said, right, no alcohol, you go to the NAFI and it's not, you can see the bar, but the bar's shut to trainee guardsmen. You're not allowed there.
Okay.
So there was just no alcohol, and it was fine. When we would get home off a weekend, I'd go to the pub, get absolutely smashed with my pals. They found it absolutely hysterical that I'm a soldier. Like, I'm away doing that thing. They were fascinated as well. I remember having my chest, walking into the pub, opening the door. And I remember, do you know that you get that funny feeling? I don't know if you've ever walked in a pub and something's happened and everyone, it seems like everybody stops and looks. I remember walking into my local pub one Friday night after getting home, and it was somebody's party, one of my friends' party, and I walked in, and it just seemed like everybody just stopped, and I was, bearing in mind I used to be 8 stone, and here I am now, this soldier, and it's like the shirt that I wore, like I was stocky in my shoulders and my chest, because I was also lifting weights every day. So there's this like this new guy that used to be a smackhead a few years ago, that people that were in that pub would have spat on me or crossed over the street to get away from me. They're now wanting to come up and buy me drinks at the bar. Boggie, you want a pint? I'd be like, no, it's all right, mate, I've got my own money. No, come on, let me get you a pint. You're absolutely smashing it, pal. Made up for you. You're like, aye, thank you. Ken, I've gone in. I'll have a whiskey. And it's like the same people, like I said, that would have been hating on me. Rightly so, I suppose, for some people's opinions. But so then I get sent down London, do my ceremonials, Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, Tower of London, St James's Palace, red tunic, bearskin, with this rifle that I now know how to strip and clean, put a blindfold on and put it back together again. And not only that, I know how to fire it. Pretty crazy thought process, standing at Buckingham Palace. Like standing there and having those hours by myself to think about crazy. Every time I moved, Frank, the camera flashes, thousands of them, bang, 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 bang. And I was like, I only pulled my rifle up and slammed my foot in, right? And it's like, oh, the guy, he's going to move. And I would march a few paces to the right, about turn, come back and stop. And I'm like this is mental. Like, this is actually crazy what's happened in my life.
Yeah. To
be standing here. I had a lot of time to reflect on Buckingham Palace and the other posts. It was just amazing. And then 9 months I was in London. Drink culture, very much so, down for the guys in the F Company and the Scots Guards. It is not just for the F Company, but for the squaddy thing down there. Everybody's out getting pissed at every given opportunity. If you're not working...
Where was you based, Paul? Whereabouts in London were you based?
So it's Wellington Barracks, I was in.
All right, okay. Yeah, I know, yeah.
Stone's throw away, and it's stone's throw away for Buckingham Palace. But, I'm out there on a Friday or Saturday night, down in London. This Edinburgh guy used to be a heroin addict, and I'm cutting around, and I'm having bouncers and stuff coming up to me. I'm out with all my pals, 18, 19, 20-year-old. Some of them looked about 14, right? I'm out with all these young guardsmen, and I've got all these big bouncers and that coming up to me, saying, "How you doing, pal? All right?" And I'm like, "Aye, mate, aye. How are you?" So there's quite a few of yous in the night, aren't you? He's all Scottish. And I'd be like, no, not all Scottish. There's some English, mate, but I'd probably say about half of us are Scottish. He says, do me a favour, mate, go and just keep an eye on it. Go and just keep an eye on them. And I was like, aye, no worries, mate, aye. No, I'll be fine. If there's any dramas, come and see me. And my pals used to get the kill because the bouncers thought that I was the sergeant.
Yeah.
Whenever there was trouble, they would say, like, my pals would come up and say, the bouncers tell me if I didn't stop gobbing off, he's gonna tell my sergeant. And he means you. And we used to get a kill. And it's like, so we would play on it.
Yeah.
We would play on it out in London. We would go into all these high, quite flashy nightclubs in London. And they were like, put Boggie to the front. Put Boggie to the front.
Yeah.
I was like, guys, come on now. Right, so like, Boggie, just go to the front. So they send me up first. And then I'd go up to the bouncers and I say, all right, guys, how you doing? Say, I've got a few of the boys here tonight. I say, some of them are quite young, but they're all off age. Is there any chance to let us in? I say, are you in charge? Aye, mate. There'll not be any dramas. Right, crack on. You know, and it was always the same. So the guys used to love going out with me because I was getting them into all these nightclubs that usually they were getting turned away from. Loved it, you know, and it was amazing. I get sent back to Cataract to start my pre-deployment training to go to Afghanistan on my first tour. Shit hit the fan in my mind. I'm seeing guys coming back missing limbs. I'm hearing stories of guys no coming back.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, geez, like all the sort of fun and games side there. No fun and games, but you know what I mean, like the toy soldier duties doing in London and doing all that's amazing, fun. Now the shit's really hitting the fan because we're training. All this training that I've been going through, it's all leading up to this point where you're getting shipped over. Your dates came in. You're doing all the pre-deployment trainings in full swing. Had that element of fear. Then my army pals came up and visited me, and they made a little bit of a joke about it, sort of. What we're going to get up to when we're over there and all that. And eventually the fear subsided, and you know, so I'm ready. I've trained for it. I know what I'm doing. I know when the shit hits the fan, I can pick up any one of my pals. We always kit. I know I'm strong enough to do it. I don't have to worry. You know, I've trained on the weapon systems. I've trained my first aid. You know, in my mind every day, I'm self-talking, saying I've trained for this. Like I've done it. You know, I am my guardsman. And then I'm travelling back down to Cataract, past Otterburn, have a car crash. I wasn't driving. My army pal was driving. Have a car crash. I break my back. The Fijian guy sitting behind me wasn't wearing his seatbelt. He threw into the back of my chair and that crushed my spine. So I'm lying in a field in the snow, where my injuries. My face was all smashed. I didn't know what my injuries were. I knew it was serious because of the pain. In my mind, I'm still going to Afghan with all my pals. I'll recover. I've been injured many times and I've recovered. And this will be no different. Ambulance comes after 40 minutes. Hypothermia started to set in because I'm lying in the snow. Get taken to Newcastle. They put me on that. They put me through that polo machine.
Yeah.
Put me through that. That was horrendous. Getting me on that board to go on that, come out. Yeah, you broke your back, but not only that, you've crushed your L1. They told me how it had happened. You see, when you hit the boulder at the side of the road, that's what broke your back. He says when your pal that was sitting behind you never had his seatbelt on. When he's threw all the weight of him into the back of your chair, it's burst the chair and it's threw the chair forward and crushed it. So I'm there for 4 weeks and I'm begging the army to let me go to Afghan. Like, come on, can I go? Can I go? And they're like, just concentrate on your recovery. Just get better, Paul, and we'll see what happens. And I'm like, right, okay. So hydrotherapy, acupuncture, intense military rehab courses, doing everything. My back's still goosed. But I'm trying to hide it, Frank. Yeah. I'm trying to hide it through all the NCOs. I'm not wanting them to see that I'm in the pain that I'm in, because I'm wanting to go to Afghan with my pals. I had my heart set on it, and I felt like a failure. And it was nothing that I'd done, but I felt like a failure, and I wanted to go. But it was not to be. It was not my destiny. My destiny was for that to be snatched away at the last minute, for me to be put back on codeine and tramadol and heavy opiate medications by the army doctors to help me combat this horrendous pain that I've got in my back.
Yeah,
they knew about my heroin addiction, but there was no alternatives. So I go back on the codeine and the tramadols, and I start abusing my drugs.
Right.
I become an addict because I'm taking all these tablets every day. They're addictive medications, tramadol and codeine. Yeah. They're the same family as heroin. So when I'm swallowing all these tablets and taking lots of them, I'm getting an almost heroin hit from the tablets if I take enough of them.
Yeah.
And by this point, I am fully trying to cope with not going to Afghan. They're now talking about medical discharge. It broke my heart. I was broken physically, but more than that, I was broken mentally. And I felt like a failure. And I couldn't shake that. You know, obviously it wasn't your fault. You weren't driving. Like, I know. Okay, my mum and dad say it wasn't your fault. Like, what's happened to you's happened to you. But for me personally, it was like I had went through all that training, and the end goal was going to Afghan, and then write the book on return from Afghanistan, and that was always the plan in my mind, and that's where I got the title Heroine to Hero, the title of my book.
I was just going to say, I think this should be a good point, because you know we've talked about a lot about the negativity of the drugs at two different periods of your life, you know, and what an appropriate title for a book. You know, Heroine to Hero. I would say this, Paul. I can understand the disappointment. We've spoken to military people, and I've got friends who've served, and I've got a much better understanding of that camaraderie between them. That they're clear, you know, they're brothers, they're family. So I can partly appreciate how you felt that you didn't get the opportunity, you know, to go along and do your bit, for want of a better way of putting it. I would say this though as well. Let's be grateful you're here. You know, let's be grateful that you're here, because you're doing something equally as powerful, Paul. Because you're here to tell us your story. You know, your beginnings. How young people can, you know, whether it's through wanting to feel a sense of belonging, and we all do it. We all group together in different ways. And we take comfort from that, and you know, that's the message you're putting across. But what you've also done is you've told us how you've gone beyond that. You've moved on, you know, beyond that. One minute you're a physical wreck, and then you're a big strong man. You're certainly a big strong man. You're good enough to go and fight for your country. You know, that's a massive, massive change, and you know, I think you should be applauded for that. Definitely be applauded for that. And I'm glad you've written that book. I'm glad you've written that book, because that's a great message to take forward. for young people in the future.
Yeah, and it's funny. The title of the book happened in basic training. I'm sitting in the woodland, telling my stories of being in Edinburgh, and everybody said, Paul, you should write a book. So I was like, well, I've actually been writing as part of my recovery. But yeah, and I thought about it, and I thought, Heroine to Hero. And they're like, oh, great title. I'll go to Afghanistan. When I come back from my first tour, I'll publish the book, and it'll be titled Heroine to Hero. Brilliant idea. Everybody's like, that's an amazing idea. Well, I never got to Afghanistan. And the biggest problem for me was that I wasn't a part of the gang. That was the biggest problem that I had. The camaraderie that you're speaking of, you get that camaraderie when you're fighting in Afghan or Iraq or Belfast or wherever it is you've served together. That's where you get that closeness, that bond. And I was stripped from that. So all my friends from basic training, they all got much closer, and I wasn't part of it, or so I felt. So the title of the book, when people see the title of this book, they see the word heroine, they see the word hero, and they see this guy here with Scots Guard uniform on. And they might be forgiven for thinking, oh, a hero, he must have been up to some crazy shit over in Afghan. He's obviously been taking out some Taliban and he's writing about it and stuff. That's why the expression never judge a book by its cover. So, and this is literally the perfect prime example of that. So I almost burnt this book twice since leaving the army, because it's not going to be able to be written. I'm not a hero. I never got my chance. I was stripped to it and wallowing in self-pity. And feeling sorry for myself, and honestly, I'm not writing the book. And then, beginning of lockdown, Frank, my wife comes in. She says, oh, I think we're going to be locked in for a couple of weeks because of this COVID thing, coronavirus. And I'm like, what's that? So I go on online, have a look. Right, so what am I going to do? Maybe write the book. So I was like, so I got all the paperwork out, and I sat up for 3 days and 3 nights. I sat on that chair, put the music on, and I'm sitting, writing. No sleep, just completely wired into this. Everything in my head is coming out onto paper, and I'm crying, and I'm going through these whole emotions of back being suicidal and all this depression. I'm writing it all down. Then I'm writing about how I broke my head on addiction, and a light bulb goes off in my head, and I was like, all these tablets that I'm on, I want off them. I wasn't wanting to put the pressure on myself because I've got a very real injury right now, you can maybe tell. But it plays havoc with my life. So I tapered off, and I'm 17 months completely drug-free now. Don't even take ibuprofen.
That's brilliant.
And I love it. I love it. And I'm in shit state most days with my back. I don't go to the doctors. I don't get tramadol. I don't get codeine. That makes me happy inside. Makes me proud of myself inside. And I just love it. And that's why I'm on social media trying to raise awareness of the book, but also my own personal journey of addiction and how to break addiction, the mind and everything. I'm giving it to everybody now. I was sitting listening to Tom Walker. He was singing a song called Leave a Light On. And that inspired me to donate all the money to homelessness in Scotland. And that's why I suppose really that I'm here with you tonight, is because I've got this book and I don't make a single penny from the book. I'm donating all the profits to homelessness in Scotland. I have just finished writing the play So there's an actor down in London right now who's from Edinburgh. He's also a Hibernian fan like me. So we're both Hibs fans. He found me on social media. I met him and he said, how do you feel about doing that? He says, Trainspotting was a book. Then it was a play. Then it was a feature film. How do you feel about me writing a play for you for the Edinburgh Fringe next year? And I'm like, aye, that's amazing, right? So he messaged me earlier tonight. He's been working on it for months. He says, almost finished. I'm like, mate, this is so exciting. I can't wait. So I've got that. I'm visiting prisons. So I've visited Sockton in Edinburgh. They bought 24 copies of my book from Amazon. So the book's on Amazon, both paperback and ebook. They bought 24 copies for the library. They want me to go back. The inmates loved it. They loved having me in. They loved hearing my story like I've just shared with you guys. Then a few weeks ago, I got a message from Perth Prison in Scotland. How did you feel about coming into Perth? And I was like, yeah, love it. So last week, I'm in Perth Prison, and that went even better than in Edinburgh. The inmates seemed to, well, because I'm all over YouTube, they've been watching some YouTube videos. They were allowed to watch some YouTube videos of my podcast in the prison. So I walked into Perth last week. There's Paul Boggie. I heard that. I could hear them all. There's a big man there. Look, there's I oh man, I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm meeting you and that. And I'm like, what? This is crazy. It's like, we've been watching you on YouTube, mate. It's amazing, your story and stuff. Can't wait to hear. So I done a talk for a couple of hours. I went on the prison radio, and then I just got a confirmation email tonight. They're wanting me to go back in on the 27th of October, and we're going to do something with the book, maybe an audio book. I'm going to go back in and spend some time with inmates and get to know them, get to help them with their addiction problems. I love it because certainly during lockdown, I've been stuck in the house, Frank. I've not been out. So I'm now out the door doing Morrison's supermarkets. I spoke to the head honcho, Morrison's. Yeah. Told them who I was. They've accepted me into the Morrison stores to do my book signings.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
So I'm going to be travelling across Scotland doing a book tour, down England, down Wales, everywhere. Maybe America. Once the play hits Edinburgh Fringe, I might be invited to go over to America, New York, you know. I'm a Scotsman and I'm also an ex-guardsman. Two things that the Yankees love about. So I think, well, let's go over to New York and put the play on over there, and I'll do some book signings or something. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm optimistic, and although physically I do struggle, I'm in a happy place.
Good.
Mentally.
You come across that way, mate, and you listen. You questioned 4 letters on the front of that book. You know,
yeah,
the letters that make up Hero, and it may not have been done in the way you might have wanted it to be, but what you're doing, the inspiration you're giving other people, the help you're giving, you know, it does make you a hero, mate. It does. You know, heroes come in different, you know, shapes and sizes and different forms, and you know, the criteria for coming on, we certainly try to aim for this anyway, is that on frankly speaking, we want real and inspiring people, you know, and you're certainly real, mate. There's no doubt about that. You're certainly real, and you're clearly inspiring. You've inspired yourself for a start. You've inspired yourself on more than one occasion. You've inspired yourself, and now you're going out and inspiring other people. So, you know, you're just the type of guest that we want, you know, on our particular podcast, and we sincerely thank you for coming on, because you know, we can see it's been an emotional ride for you, you know, a physical one, a mental one, and it's clearly taken its toll at certain stages. But you look well. I said it at the beginning, and I'll say it again at the end. You look well in yourself. You sound confident. You know where you want to go. You know what you want to do, and we really wish you all the best for the future. And we'll keep in touch, Paul. We'll keep in touch because myself and Gary from Mac the Hat Media, we're always interested as to what happens to the guests after they've appeared. So I'm going to finish now. If there's anything else you'd like to say, that's entirely up to you. If you could just stay on for another 5 minutes when we stop recording, I'd appreciate that. In the meantime, again, I'm going to thank all the viewers. I'd encourage them to buy the book because it's not only acknowledging the fact it's your story and you wrote the book, but the fact you're also using it to help other people, which I think is amazing. So again, I'd like to thank all our viewers, our subscribers, etc. Once again, Paul, I'd like to thank you. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And we wish you all the very best for the future, my friend. So take care, okay? Cheers.
Thanks very much, mate. I appreciate you having me on.